All right, everybody. Today we're going to be judging the debate. All trans people are delusional. With delusional misspelled, that's completely all right. I won't dock points for that because it's in the title. Um, so we're gonna go over the description, which is really just a definition. They say as trans people, I define those who have undergone or want to undergo a gender transition surgery, use or want to use hormones to alter their physical appearance to resemble more of a person of the opposite sex, and people who feel as a person of the opposite gender. All right, so we have some important parts of the definition. So these are people that are not only undergone but want to undergo gender transition surgery, use or want to use hormones to alter their physical appearance to resemble more of a person of the opposite sex, or a person who feels like a person of the opposite gender. All right. So what's my bias? I'm moderately pro because it depends on how you define delusional, right? If you define delusional as not necessarily in touch with reality. You define it as them not necessarily being realistic with their view on gender and sex, then I would agree with this. If you take delusional to mean like, oh, they're having they're, how does one put this, having like schizophrenic delusions, right? Or they, are in the middle of a psychotic episode with psychosis, right? Then no, right? But largely I agree with this, right? And so let's get started. Let me go over this. So the burden of proof is going to be on pro. This means that pro needs to prove that all trans people are indeed delusional. So this is the first debate where we actually have key arguments. Now, key arguments are arguments that will win the debate if they are won, but by the person who has the burden of proof, because of course they're putting forth the arguments, right? So if they don't manage to win any of these, then solid arguments are the next step. But let me explain what key arguments are. Key arguments are like, well, let's just go ahead and say that they define delusional as not real. They don't have a realistic interpretation of sex and gender, and they prove this through, I don't know. Sex is being redefined in order to suit the twisted needs of people. Key argument, right? It's not actually what sex is. We could call that like the sex argument. If they win that, they automatically win the debate, right? Colin just needs to make it to where it's rebutted in a way to where it's at least understandable and convincing, right? Solid arguments. Solid arguments are 3 points, right? These are arguments that are directly pertinent to the debate, but in a debate that the burden of proof is actually established. This is like arguments. These are arguments that are pertinent, but aren't necessarily like directly applicable towards a win. So, for instance, saying that trans people have mental health issues on average, right? And likely can't make an appropriate decision concerning their future health and their gender identity, that would be considered a solid argument, right? Moderate arguments are arguments that, yeah, I can see how they apply, but they're not exactly pertinent to the discussion. Like they aren't the most important thing to know. Like it's not completely relevant, right? So let's just go ahead and say that you were to say something along the lines of, oh well, trans people like gender ideology in and of itself, doesn't necessarily work out for so and so. Well, that's fantastic, right? And it is applicable, but it's not that pertinent because regardless of gender theory, they're going to still feel that way, right? In that sense, regardless if you have modern gender theory that's saying it's okay or traditional theory that's saying that it's not okay, right? Now, of course, you could go and make that into a solid argument by saying, like, oh, well, the society supporting it makes them more likely to exist, blah, blah, blah. That makes it solid. But if you just go off of that, that's more moderate. Then, like, a light argument is something along the lines of, like, a lot of, transsexuals are very promiscuous, and as such, they cannot directly consent towards constructive decisions towards their sexuality because they're already inherently destructive. And that's minor because it's really has nothing to do with the topic, but it is relevant enough to where you can use it as a stepping stone for other points. So that's how I score. Conduct, as I said last debates, I had a moderator reach out to me and he said, conduct needs to be awarded only for like direct insults. I include passive aggressive. Sorry, because I have a lot more respect for people that are aggressive than people that just decide to be passive aggressive, right? So if I see any aggressive or passive aggressive remarks, that's tally, right? Spelling and grammar, moderator reached out to me again. Spelling and grammar will be awarded based off of, are there any grammar mistakes that impede my ability to understand the sentence or read it correctly, right? So if any of if any of that is disturbed, then I can go ahead and mark a tally. The ones with the most tally loses. The one with the least tally wins. Same with conduct, right? I used to do spelling errors, right, and grammatical errors that were semi-obvious, but a moderator once again reached out and he said, no, don't do that. So I will not. And the last we have concerns sources. Do the sources agree with your actual argument? Do they contradict each other? Do you use sources at all? Right. Each time a source contradicts somebody, I'll mark a point. Your sources don't work, I'll mark a point. The one with the least amount of points wins sources. Ties are of course the same number of tallies. Let's get going. And by the way, sorry about my voice and sorry that I might be a bit scattered. I am sick. I have viral pharyngitis, which is definitely impeding my ability to act in my full capacity. But let's go ahead and continue judging because I actually have free time to do it. So we start with the pro. Syllogisms. Let's start with some syllogisms, shall we? All men are of the nature to have a specific set of reproductive organs to produce semen and share gender-specific genes. All women are of the nature to have a different set of reproductive organs to men to produce ova and share gender-specific genes. Therefore, men can't possess female reproductive organs, aren't of the nature to produce ova, and can't share gender-specific genes with women. Therefore, men are not women, and vice versa. Gender transition surgeries can only alter the entry and exit points of the reproductive system, namely turn penis into vagina and vice versa. GTS, gender transition surgery, do not alter the inner reproductive organs and genome of a man and a woman, and they can't enable one to produce gametes opposite of those which their birth gender can. Therefore, gender transition surgery can't change one from a man to a woman and vice versa. Surgeries and hormones can actually change one's gender. Trans people undergo or want to undergo these surgeries and use or want to use hormones, and they feel as a person of the opposite sex. Trans people can't actually change their gender. Trans people can't actually change their gender from previous syllogisms. Trans people believe they already have or can alter their gender, or at least want to do something impossible. Trans people believe a lie. Trans people actually believe a lie from previous syllogism. People who believe in a lie are disillusioned. Trans people are disillusioned. I have one right here, but I will proceed. So this is a key argument. So we will mark this the impossibility argument. So note that if pro wins this argument, he wins the whole debate. Advanced rebuttals. So he's just going right into it. Why do you care? Since everyone can believe what they want, even in a lie, after all, we have freedom of thought. First of all, I do agree that everyone has the freedom to think and believe in whatever they want, even in a lie. However, one's freedom ends when another one starts. So I cannot accept propaganda and mind washing against our society and children. As long as trans people, or even normal people for that matter, do not try to actively persuade other people to believe in a lie, do not actively publicate their feelings about people who do not take them seriously, as every normal person should do, and such, or make fun of them, which isn't as good because it can cause bias and prejudice against these people, and I have no problem against trans people. When a propaganda of lies becomes the norm, it is inevitable and ethical to take it down and unethical to support it. Now, I take the stance that, yeah, the spread should be contained for sure, that you should not allow those ideas to make it into the mainstream, make it into media, etc. But when you allow people like that to congregate in gay clubs, and in drag shows for cross-dressing, etc., right? Just people that are degenerate in general, they will organize, and because they're a minority, their cohesive force, basically tempered by the pressure of the majority, are going to continue to propagate under that pressure, right? And they'll have a lot easier time sticking with one another than the majority, because the majority is in the majority. They're not going to feel that pressure, right? So they're a lot more likely to overcome their differences. That's why you have to eliminate even those opportunities for them to congregate, right? Make it as difficult for them to change the society as possible. But that's just my own tangent. But not all women can produce ova, and not all men can produce semen. So what? It doesn't change the point that all women, even those incapable of producing gamete, are of the nature to do it. For those who have an inability, it is unnatural since it is caused by either an illness, a genetic anomaly, or another kind of health problem. Of course, this is also true about men. This argument, were it valid, would demand a new definition of the word woman and man to include people who cannot produce gametes. However, the argument is invalid and there is no need to redefine the word. For example, were an alien to come visit Earth, he would see humans with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 heads and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hands. I'm talking, of course, for people with genetic anomalies, as again, it isn't natural. It would be a category mistake to define humans as beings with any number of heads and any number of hands. It would also be wrong to categorize them as beings with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 heads and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hands. What would be correct for the alien to do would be to categorize humans having 1 head and 2 hands, but also note there are some kinds of genetic anomalies or health issues irregularly altering that number, awaiting the response. Then we have intelligence 06. Definitions. As trans people, I would define, The statement did not define anything due to a flaw in the sentence structure. The part after I define is entirely a subject, and there is no good object present afterwards or before it, perceivably. The definition is not directed to correspond to any phrase, regardless if pro is trans or not. I don't think that you really understand what they were trying to do there, or perhaps you're being willfully ignorant. But what they're trying to do is they're saying trans people, right? The subject trans people are either people that have undergone or want to undergo gender transition. That's one category. People that use or want to use hormones to alter their physical appearance. That's another category. And they are people who feel that they are the opposite gender. That's another category. So the subject, trans people, have 3 defining characteristics that could line them up with this definition, right? So it's fair. I'm not going to say that it's nonsensical. It's definitely fair, and you accepted this debate, so you have to at least agree with this definition. If you disagreed with the definition, right? Let me check the comments in case you disagreed. No, you did not. So if you didn't disagree with the definition, if you didn't ask him to change it, if he didn't lie to you, then you have to accept that definition if it's valid like that, and it is. Disillusional. This term is not meaningfully circulated as a term in English. Disillusional. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Fair enough. Delusional. I just honestly thought it was delusional. That's why I have it put here. So I thought it was a spelling error, but I'm assuming they mean like disillusioned. Like, perhaps they meant this. Wait. Okay, I can't spell apparently. Here, wait. Now I'm curious. Disillusioned. There we go. I don't know how I was spelling it. Disillusioned. Disappointed in someone or something that one discovers to be less than good than what it believed. Cause someone to realize that a belief or an ideal is false. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they are that they meant this. Again, you accepted the debate, so you understood before that that's not necessarily a word, but you can infer the meaning off of it. I'm not going to award you any points or any arguments for pointing that out. This term is not meaningfully circulated as a term. I do respect the gusto though. Like you are hitting all the stops to win, which is fair. It's a term in English. So if we really are nitpicking, the topic prompt cannot ever be true as it attempts to access ideas in cases without truth values. Because such ideas do not exist, this term is also concerningly absent from the rest of prose R1. Wait a second. Is that actually the case? Are disillusioned. Like, disillusional, disillusioned. You can infer that they're meaning the same things. It was definitely in prose argument. It's a lie to go ahead and claim that it wasn't. If you're saying that the term, this exact term was not present, then I would say you're probably correct. Again, like I thought that they meant like delusional, not like disillusioned or whatever, right? So I won't mark you for that, but in the future, if I do catch other debates with that type of argumentative style, and they have made like something that you can infer off of it, and you try to sidestep that, I will mark a conduct. But again, they were the ones to mess up first, so I'm not gonna mark you down. Define those who have undergone or want to undergo a gender transition surgery, use or want to use hormone shelter. Okay, this will be my definition. Okay, I define. Okay, undergo, use or want to use hormone shelter. Okay, more a fearless person. Okay, be my definition that will be provisionally used here. The wording is strikingly similar to Pro's failed attempt at defining something, so I'm going to assume Prose agrees with it unless Pro brings up a valid criticism. Oh, come on, you really don't need to do that. Like we all knew what they meant. Like we all know what they mean. You don't need to do that. Like if I'm not gonna count, like if I'm disallowed from counting grammar errors like that, you don't need to point that out. Properties of transgenderism in high tech. Pro did not state the stage of society to be considered in the frame of definition. In fact, transgenderism has existed since the BCE periods. Oh yes, this is a common argument. Again, I can't bring anything that I know from the debate, right? But whatchamacallit, if I were debating this, I would definitely talk about it. Right, overtly gender non-conforming themes historically. Okay. Oh, well, you chose a very left-leaning source, but it is a valid source. We have no reason to believe they will just disappear in the future when technology boosts upwards. We have no reason to believe that transgenderism will die out when the technique of replacing the entirety of male and sex organs with female sex organs with reasonable placement or vice versa gets developed by a scientific research team. We have no reason to believe that transgenders will disappear when we finally grasp the idea of conscious transfer a girl's mind to a man. Huh. If such technologies are possible, which they theoretically are, I mean, they're just a collection of movement of molecules from one place or another. Ah, yes, I'm assuming this guy's atheist. That would mean a biological male. Let me actually see if I can test that. It won't affect my judging in the debate, but it would kind of be a meme. Unknown. No, we don't know. Fair enough. This guy's smart cookie from what I remember. Like, I remember reading some of his debates when I first joined the site. Okay, or vice versa, gets developed by a scientific research team, and we have no reason to. Okay, theoretically, okay, we were right here. Would mean biological male give a person as biological female, vice versa, or even mutilate one's body so it contains both or neither as wish, regardless of ethical viability. In that case, biological transgenderism would be no delusion. Pro's debate set up as an instigator included nothing other than almost a definition of both descriptions, putting no limitations on what case must be considered. Therefore, as we consider all that is theoretically possible and viable, there ought to be cases of biological transgenderism that is no delusion. The topic is proven false if all the present. Well, I'm not going to award you an argument for this because this is the equivalent of me going, hey, the Bible said that Jesus is going to come back to life and, defeat the Antichrist. And he's going to do it. And if you say that he has not done it, and there's no proof that he's going to, anything like that, I can just say, well, we have the Bible, and a bunch of people believe in the Bible, and that makes a valid argument that he's going to do it because we believe that there's a chance that he could, right? It's just like, yeah, there is a chance in the future that we create the science to transplant, male reproductive organs into females, etc., and have them work as intended, right? But as somebody who's actually studying to enter the medical field, I will say that transplants in and of themselves right now have a high rejection rate. That's why it's very important to get people with like similar ethnic backgrounds to you, same blood type, etc. Right? And normally speaking, these people are on immune suppressing medication, so their body doesn't outright start attacking the organs that are supposed to, help them. So we're still a long ways away from that. So even if I grant in the future we have a potential to do this. It's not what Pro is debating. Pro is debating that all trans people are delusional, right? So they're not saying, for instance, all trans people, now and before, right, and in the future, are delusional. They're making the statement that all trans people are delusional right now, essentially, right? Because if we go based off of their cases, which is what we have to go ahead and judge off, and off of the definition, who have undergone, which denotes past tense, want to undergo gender transition surgery. So we're talking about people within this generation, because people that have not existed yet cannot want to do something because they're not in this world yet. So unless you're saying that this technology is viable within, like, let's just say somebody who's like 5 years old wants to transition and they keep that, and let's just say they even live to 100 in the next 95 years, I can't grant your argument, and you've given me no reason to believe that that's the case, so your argument is null and void. These set of claims are part of linear R1 argument setup, which Pro could use, that could be cut off at any point unless any reinforcements adds at a later time, and thus unproven. Let's read that. Gender transition surgery can alter the entrance and exit points of a penis and a vagina, and vice versa. Gender transition surgeries do not alter the inner reproductive organs and genome of a man and a woman, and they cannot enable one to produce gametes of the opposite of those which their birth gender can. Therefore, GTS can change from man to woman and vice versa. So, basically, if I understand this correctly, you're trying to say that if technology in the future alters this statement, then it can be disproven, right? Which I agree with, right, if that were the case. But you haven't given me a reason to prove that, according to the definition, right, the ones that, are currently alive, right, who use or want to use hormones, or people who feel as a person of the opposite gender, right, you haven't proven that that's, like, relatively possible in the near future. I can't give you the argument. Groups and exceptions. People who feel as a person of the opposite gender. This group is a part of the definition that qualifies trans people. That means as long as I want to be another gender, and I really do want it, I am trans according to this definition. Here, I want to be female is different from I am female. If you really are biologically male, then I want to be female itself acknowledges that you could be non-female, which is not delusional. No. It's the equivalent of saying, I want to be a wolf, right? And then I can't be a wolf. There's nothing that you can do. I could, to be a wolf, I could genuinely desire to be a wolf, but unless you're stating that, just like this technology, like this, the wolf changing technology is going to be viable in the next 90 years, which you haven't proven, then your argument's still in void. These are all very bad arguments. Define those who have undergone or want to undergo gender transition surgery. Although unrecommended, doing these surgeries for fun technically counts you as trans. But the part that sparks any concerns about delusions, that's a very bad faith argument. I guess I will technically give it to you, though. Oh no, I accidentally went out of my Google Doc. I just realized that. History. There we go. So I will go ahead and give you that, but I will mark it under the minor argument. We'll call this the fun argument. It's kind of like you're taking this in a bad faith way. It's not going to be a good argument. I rest my case. It's theoretically possible. Pro cannot speak for the future. Okay, several groups within Pro's delusional frame do not necessarily involve any delusions at all. This topic is not as of yet proven. Corrections. English isn't my mother language, so the weirdly worded definition is a mistake on my part, and I accept yours. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I've dealt with people that, have English as their second language. My wife has English as her second language. And especially when, we first started talking, she would mix up words. And she would, say words that aren't necessarily, like, grammatically correct. Right? It's just something that, you deal with as, a secondary English speaker, and I don't think that people should be punished for that. So fair. As illusional, I meant illusional or disillusioned, right? Any of these two terms fit? Yeah, what I thought. Another linguistic mistake of my being a non-native. That's fine. If you actually do watch this, I'm curious where you're from. My wife, she's Chinese. She lives in the Philippines. So, go Asians. Rebuttals. Opponents claim that the all part of my definition is invalid because of something called could or could not happen in the future advancements of gender transition surgery. However, my opponent is not a clairvoyant. Yeah, exactly. This debate is happening in the present, and thus any definition I provided is valid on present biology and not on future technology. Common scientific facts and common sense won't change any time, even if technology enables humans to do more and more things with their bodies. Source rebuttals. So you quoted a source about the history of transgenderism. Besides the fact that it isn't a primary source, there are several problems with it. Transgender and gender nonconformity has throughout time taken on an example. Ancient Egyptian gods, male Japanese actors, or any other period playing female characters, not Native American traveling third gender roles, but totally Navajo and Zuni. Transgenderism alongside other forms of gender nonconformity. Okay. Answer. The Navajo, Nanachi, and Zuni describe, quote, effeminate men and masculine women, according to your source. Well, effeminate man doesn't constitute a trans man slash woman or someone that has or can change their gender. For instance, let's say I have no facial hair, i.e. a mustache, long blonde hair, gynecomastia, high levels of estrogen, and other characteristics that put me in the position of an effeminate man. How does that mean I am or could ever be a woman? No. Of that or that I feel trans, not necessarily. It just means that I could likely be a homosexual person or simply a heterosexual man looking like a woman. In no way this means that I could become or already am a member of the opposite gender. Same is true for masculine women or Native American translating third gender roles. This means that there is a third gender role, not a third gender. Additionally, for members of the two original genders, the fact still remains that men can't become women and women can't become men. However, men can possess the third gender role and potentially women could possess the third gender role as well. None of the two can become their opposite, even according to Native Americans. Across Europe, there are examples of transgenderism to be found, starting at the Vikings, passing through early modern Europe before continuing to the present day. Norse mythology, similar to that of ancient Egypt, saw Loki and Odin having distinctly gender fluid roles. Odin was proficient in the apparently effeminate Sidir magic, or however you pronounce that. And different stories portray both Loki and Odin as women. Dramatizations of Viking life on TV and film presents distinct gender norms, with men being muscular and full of bravado, but real Viking conceptions of gender was not as set in stone as this would suggest. Odin and Loki were considered to be gods, and therefore as gods they were able to do things and take forms unimaginable for humans, Vikings. So the fact that Odin and Loki were portrayed as women in some fairy tales doesn't mean that there was or is anything to suggest that the same could be done for humans. Leave folklore alone and use real-world examples. I could say that the Minotaur was two species, human and bull, but there is one major problem. The Minotaur did not exist. Thus, Odin and Loki are out of the picture. There is a fallacy within the source. You quoted the source. So you're either not logically endorsing the fallacy, or you didn't notice it. I didn't know which is worse. The fallacy is that the source claims that Odin to be gender fluid because he was proficient in a form of magic considered to be mainly practiced by women. Manly won't count that second language. First of all, with Odin being the all-father and all, he was capable of every form of magic. It makes sense to me. Secondly, and most importantly, being involved in practicing something feminine doesn't equal in my being trans, able to change my gender, willing to change my gender. For example, if were I to love pink, it would make me neither trans nor able nor willing to change my gender. The same fallacy is prevalent throughout his source, so I won't individually rebut every instance mentioned by it, because it is a holistic rebuttal of your source. I will give you sources for that. Good shit. Finally, we have this piece. Early modern Western Europe, including but not exclusive to France and Spain, saw people write, including but not exclusive, okay. Saw many people write about overtly gender nonconforming themes. A 1322 French poem by Colonimus Ben Colonimus contained evidently gender dysphoric feelings. He laments at being created as a man and wishes to be female. There are several examples of the 16th century Spanish girls growing up and taking on male identities. For example, Antonio de Araso ne Catalina, who went on to fight as a mercenary in the Arauco War. War 1536 to 1810 in modern-day Chile. Gender nonconformity was therefore prevalent in Europe, but this is not to say that it was not also ubiquitous in other parts of the world. Dysphoria is a mental illness, so it makes sense that some deranged people would have felt it during the Middle Ages. These people, not having access to medical aid and or psychiatrists, They went on to embrace their illusion. Nowadays, even with medical aid being available, most trans people still prefer to do permanent damage to their body scoops. Sorry, that might have ear-raped you. I'm just shifting in my chair and I knocked over my mic. Instead of treating their medical illness, even if I dress up as a woman, seriously thinking I am a woman doesn't make me something. Yeah, and you have to understand that, like, back in Spain, like, and being a Spaniard myself, like, growing up, with my, dad who grew up, who had family, like, that grew up in Spain, and him, visiting his Spanish relatives and all that, right? And being very proud of my Spanish identity, I will say that we have, like, very strong gender roles, and women that, like, wanted to, go into, like, soldiering, mercenary work, etc., would normally need to try to pass themselves off as men, right? If you, of course, go back in time, right? That didn't necessarily make them trans, so yeah, that makes sense. To sum up, your source is totally obsolete, as transgenderism, as defined by both of us, is mainly a recent invention, mainly by the 1930s. There are only two known outliers of the Middle Ages. Your source reference, contrary to this, homosexuality has been around for as long as humanity has been around. At least some ancient Greeks were homosexual or practiced homosexuality with no consequences. I mean, I saw a video on this and I researched this, but that's a bit. In ancient Egypt, the pharaohs used to make out with male children in front of everyone in the palace. Ew. Goes to say that transgenderism is invalid and unnatural. Homosexuality is only unnatural, although acceptable. I disagree with the acceptable part, but sure. Fairland definition. English is my mother language. Okay, I apologize. Although not being entirely clear, the attempt on defining trans by the effort of pro in the description section actually can be seen as a successful one, as the object is being placed before other parts of the sentence. One example for so is, to the east we shall sail towards. I define those who have undergone or want to, okay. Since all the change I have made in the first round argument is moving the as trans people to back of the sentence, the context of trans remains stationary. It should be the argument made by both parties obviously seen. Restate these three groups, if we look at three, are trans, those who have undergone. These are directly copy-pasted from the definitional framework agreed by both. Any individual that do not satisfy either of these that do satisfy either of these three criteria is considered trans. Here, due to how it's defined, it is defined as long as there is one instance it is not delusional or disillusioned. Topic is false. No, that is a very bad faith argument. Again, I appreciate that you're taking all the stops to win it, but it's quite obvious what they mean by this. They're meaning that these people define themselves as trans, but doing so is a delusion, right? It's not rooted in reality in that way. Again, like, I can define myself, for instance, as a wolf, and perhaps one day there will be a change that will allow me to become a wolf, but that doesn't change the fact that I am not actually a wolf. That would make me delusioned or disillusioned, right? Delusional or disillusioned, right? It's a bad argument, bad faith, but it's completely understandable considering that you want to win. I'm not one to knock a guy that's trying to bring out all the stops to win. That being said, that is definitely a critique. It's not a good one. Rebuttals. Opponent claimed that, okay, all of my, okay. Nothing in the description nor the title implies that the present state of human society we are talking about, without restrictions, it could only be interpreted that there is none, that any theoretical society could have trans individuals, would therefore apply. That's not true. I already pointed that out, so we won't go back. We know what biology is. Both male and female anatomical systems are composed of cells, composed of organic molecules. We modify them, move them around. What was once a man can be morphed into a biological woman. That's how you know that you are not necessarily in the medical field. That is theoretically possible, and only limited due to the lack of adequate moral sphere, ample technology within the modern society on Earth. What I asked for is likely to be possible. Lets me know that you're really not in the medical field, and is theoretically possible. A biological man can become a biological woman by just moving around and modifying the cells. Common scientific facts, again, common sense won't change. If biology progresses to the point where cell transplanting technology is to the point a biological male can be transformed into a biological female, then said trans individual achieves what they have longed for, meaning they are not disillusioned. Just because scientific fact and common sense stay constant does not prove anything at all. Why a biological man is not a biological woman. A biological man does not keep being a biological man if a transformation to a biological woman is successful, which enables said trans individual to be not disillusioned. Debate is happening in the present. Okay, This is the addition of the conditions that were hidden before the debate was accepted. No, 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 no. You accepted this definition. It's very clear in the definition. You're just trying to critique it, and you're failing to critique it. Now, if Pro concedes that critique, then he's more than likely going to lose this debate. But all he has to do is simply point to the definition, and you lose, unless put forward new arguments. In fact, since Russell can't disprove there is a teapot in the sky, we cannot prove that there is not a society of people out there somewhere, perhaps in the stars, that has grasped such technology. The inability to disprove such societies automatically guarantees a no success for an absolute of a topic. I already went over that earlier. Social rebuttals reminder that this is a long section is solely dedicated to one source, which pointed out that trans people did exist. This constitutes all that is needed for an instance to be a trans person according to the definition. Person who feel as a person of the opposite gender. No. Yes, part of that definition, when to be like the opposite gender, is enough to be trans here. I dropped the others that presented on the source. It didn't sift it quite well, as it should have. Oh well. Well, you dropped that, but that, again, doesn't refute it. Like, again, their whole point was that somebody can do this and they can still feel as a woman, right? They just needed to do this. So, for instance, Antonio de Irauso ne Catalina, right? She could easily have still felt like a woman, right? And just wanted to be a mercenary, so she dressed up like a man. That doesn't mean that she has particular feelings toward dressing up as a man, but she had particular feelings towards wanting to fight, right? So that doesn't mean that she was feeling like the opposite gender, right? She could be completely feminine, she could feel like a woman, but blah 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 blah. This has already been touched on by Pro, unless you are stating that fighting in a war is directly linked with being a man, but you're not going to make that argument, right? So nope, that doesn't work. Extendation, just because you want to feel like an individual opposite gender does not constitute a manifestation of any unnecessary delusion. According to the definition, wanting to be like the other sex gender is enough to make you trans, or desire constitutes no necessary delusion. Doing a surgical transformation purely for fun, though unrecommended morally, does not constitute any delusion. Doing a surgical transformation advanced enough that it really turns you biologically into the other sex does not constitute any delusion. Wanting to do a surgical transformation of any complexity level for any reason would make you trans. This makes no necessary delusion. Even if I dress up as a woman, seriously think I am. Yeah, this violates the definition written and agreed upon by Pro. All the points, okay, being dropped. Rebuttals, yes, part of my definition when to be like the opposite genders and not to be trans here. I never said that these weren't trans. I just said trans people are disillusioned. Case closed. Even if I dress up as a woman, seriously, it doesn't make me one. This violates, okay. How? I never claimed this person wasn't trans. I just claimed he was trans, but not actually a woman. As I pointed out here, they're just being disillusioned. Okay, here, wait. Even if I dress up as a woman, seriously, gay. Okay, I believe this was to the Native American point. It was trans people have defined those who have undergone. Okay, that was my definition. Yeah, he just changed the position of the subject, if I remember correctly. These are directly copy pasted from the definitional framework agreed upon. An individual can do satisfy either three criteria. Okay, that's what you wrote. Notice that in my definition there is no or either, or any word that implies that just one of the criteria mentioned have to be true in order for someone to be considered trans. I instead use the word and somewhere in there to comply the last criterion should also be at play in the previous. Let's take a look. Define those who have undergone want to use hormones to alter their physical to resemble a person to the opposite sex, and people define those who want to undergo use want to go. That if I can't allow his critique, I'm not going to allow your critique. So I will not allow that. That would be definitely bad faith. Is this the last round, by the way? Oh, yeah, it is. I never claimed this person wasn't okay. That was my definition. This is what you wrote too. No, either or. I really want to give this a conduct to Khan. But once White Flame does see this, I'll ask if I can give this a conduct, because technically they're both critiquing one another, But this is final round deception pretty much. Like this is pulling out all the stops, which once again I appreciate, but is definitely in bad faith. Notice that in my definition, okay, there's no either or. Okay, said I use the word and somewhere in there to imply the last criterion should also be at play in my previous case. Well, I appreciate that if he critiques you, you're going to critique him right back. That's really fair. But that's very bad faith to do it in the final round. So immediately we can see the following points are made wrong. According to the definition, wanting to be like the other gender sex is enough to make you trans. Regular desire constitutes no necessary delusion. You can search for transformation purely for fun, although recommended. Okay. If you do the surgical transformation purely for fun, you are not trans and therefore cannot be considered disillusioned on the grounds of being one. Same as A. So immediately we can see the final point of the case are wrong. Well, again, if I'm not going to allow his critique, I'm not going to allow yours. The immense of being created like a man. There are several examples. People who feel, okay, yes, a part of my definition, when to be like the other gender, is enough to be trans. I dropped the others presented in that source. Okay, there we go. Notice the opponent never tries to object to the notion of disillusion, right? Is that disillusionality? Is that even a word? But instead focuses on the term trans yet again. Though wanting to be like the opposite gender is enough to be trans here. No, it's not enough. And even if it were enough, opponent still doesn't describe why this person is not being disillusioned. Finally, I will address the whole set of your answers as a collective. First of all, I admit that my definition of whole discussion never specified the timeline of when we are talking about. Okay, well then, if I'm going to allow that, like if you concede that, that was an extremely bad move for you to concede, because you included it in the definition. So now that I'm allowing his critique, I will allow your critique. But you pretty much lost off of that. I will tell you, like you probably lost. User want to use hormones to alter their physical appearance. Yeah, so basically, that's that, right? Like your whole thing is, hey, they're not going to be able to transition, and even if they are, it's not going to be a thing, right? Like you can never fully transition to a man being a woman, like it's impracticality, blah 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 blah. And you didn't touch on their mental health or anything like that, so you're just going off of like the pure, like, yeah, they don't exist, it's unnatural, etc., they're not going to exist. Then you concede the future point. This was one of the, you were winning so hard. I honestly thought it was going to be a shoo-in in that regard, but nope, you fluffed it, like you muffed the punt. Khan probably wins. If we're not picking here, it's obvious the discussion is happening in front of it. It refers to it. I mean, if there is nothing in my syllogism and other arguments that refers to the past or future as a part of the discussion. Nonetheless, though, if we're not nitpicking here, it's obvious the discussion is happening in the present and refers to it. Okay, so you don't concede it fully. I was about to say. I mean, is there anything in my syllogisms or any other argument that refers to the past or future as a central part of the discussion? No, only the present. Actually, my syllogism, I have only used present tenses. Therefore, I say the case is not closed yet. An opponent has to do a really hard job of defeating me. Okay. I will add one tally because you didn't directly concede it. I was so flabbergasted that you would concede such a easy win. The fact that you conceded it in your definition, your case just got a lot weaker because you didn't concede it in your definition. So that was a big blunder, big error. You muffed the punt. Like, it was horrific. Therefore, I say that the case is not closed, okay? That's why they put their hopes into nitpicking and a legal hole, little window to skip getting convicted for, or in this case defeated, to appear superior. That's very passive-aggressive. I might have to give you conduct for that. Then again, like, Khan is obviously acting in bad faith. He's lawyering. So the fact that you're calling out his lawyering, I can't give conduct for that. Ultimately, though, unless you want to continue the discussion referring to the present as it is logical, unless you want to continue discussion referring to the present, I am forced to surrender. Well, then you've lost. Let's go in and see if he concedes. If he doesn't, then there you go. Like, you've lost. Okay. Actually, in this context, I made pro-acquitted dissolution delusional, but not delusional. Therefore, the equivalent's technically worth nothing. I just typed delusional because it sounded more like a word, but disillusional is not one. I think indicates topic holds any practical meaning, and the non-word without any tangible definition linked to it. And no, pro did not say delusional. Delusional are the same, and I've clearly reasoned. Okay, Disillusion said delusional since pro made no okay argument therefore. Part of the very definition. Without said, disillusion case closed. Correct. Many trans individuals that are not disillusioned. The topic is proven wrong. I don't know if this is too late, but pro has never brought up the definition. I have lost faith or trust something formerly regarded as good or valuable. Oh my god. Oh, okay. In this case, um, oh, okay. You're talking about that definition. You're using Merriam-Webster? Okay. Well, there's also alternate definitions that are commonly used. Of course, I just use the Google dictionary, but if they pull from that, that's completely fine. Those who underwent gender reassignment surgery got what they wanted, therefore trans that dissolution, desire, and dissolution are different. What I mainly want to see is this. Mine, I did not. The purpose of this debate, that's why. Strictly present tense does not help pro. Yep. Very easy. Con wins. And it was hilarious because if you really look at the definition, it was present tense, present and past tense. They added in the bag and they muffed the punt. They got intimidated. That just, again, intelligence did not make good arguments here, but intelligence is really good at lawyering, so he won the debate by getting the opponent insecure in their own definition. Wow. Good job. That's all I gotta say. Good job. Refund got what they wanted. Desire wanted to be man or woman, desire to be trans, is accepted by the opponent. I've not lost faith. Okay, I want a cake. My being disillusioned. Respect to anything, contrary to what the masses think. Let's give the example in the order for me to be trans and speed gender. Okay, I'm just gonna speed read this because we already know who won. Person believes the other. Blah, 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 blah. Provide you with best priority seat. Where does this suppose you're an old man? One is, yeah, exactly. You do not need to satisfy all of them. Now let's review. Okay, structurally, I want to define X as a or peoples Denmark, Sweden, and Finland, but one does not. Yeah, exactly. Point is, yes, you define people as X people. Okay, so immediately we see the following points you made are wrong. It's not a requirement. They aren't disillusioned. Then my opponent would not be given those step plainly seeing the obvious. Also, since it's on balance, okay. Yeah, we already know the winner of this debate. President can't provide a flying teapot. Okay, and in mine, I did not get the purpose of the debate. Still having your arguments based on partially vagueness. Okay. Having it strictly in the present sense does not help pro to any amount. Okay. So, wow. Intelligence 06 won this solely on lawyering. That's something else. And again, like, wow. Like, again, he won this solely on lawyering. Well, the only thing that I have to say is, once again, lawyering. And I'm gonna need to give this to Khan. Lawyering. You lawyered him really, really hard. Because, like, if we look at your original arguments, right, it's on pro to have the burden of proof. So you brought up this potential, topic, and he's like, yeah, it could happen in the future. Horrific. I didn't even take that as an argument because, once again, you did not put any proof towards it. He was saying, yeah, but we're talking about the present tense. Great argument route. And instead, he muffs the pass. Like, he muffs the punt. It's over. Like, you had the ball, you were going to run out the clock, and instead of, going for a fair catch, you try to catch the ball, and it just goes straight through your arms. They run for a touchdown. Game's over. You blew it. Right? Oh, wow. That's something else. Kudos to Intelligence 06 for his lawyering ability. Wow, okay. Yeah, I won't even count the points, because, like, that's something else. So, to recap... Conduct, spelling, and grammar tied. Pro wins sources. Con wins arguments. That's that. Wow. What a debate. What a debate.